Some hotel rooms are just rooms, a bed, a window, four walls. But some rooms remember things. They remember fear. They remember pain. They remember the people who never truly left. And if you stay long enough, they remember you. Tonight, we're not exploring a haunted house hidden in the woods. We're not chasing rumors whispered online. Tonight, we're entering room 217 of the Stanley Hotel, a place so disturbing, so active, and so infamous that it inspired one of the most terrifying stories ever written. This is not fiction. This is not Hollywood. This is the real horror behind room 217. Introduction: a hotel built above the unknown, high in the Rocky Mountains in Estes Park, Colorado, surrounded by towering peaks and thick pine forests, stands the Stanley Hotel. Elegant, historic, beautiful by day. But when night falls, the halls grow longer, the silence grows heavier, and the hotel becomes something else entirely. Guests have reported footsteps with no source, doors opening on their own, laughter echoing through empty corridors, cold spots that move, and the constant feeling of being watched. And at the center of it all is room 217, the birth of the Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel was built in 1909 by Freeland Oscar Stanley, an inventor and entrepreneur. He built it as a luxury retreat for wealthy travelers suffering from tuberculosis, believing the mountain air would help them heal. But long before modern tourism, long before elegant guests, the land itself was already old. Native American tribes believed the area carried strong spiritual energy, a place where the veil between worlds was thin, and the hotel was built directly on top of it. Room 217, the incident that changed everything. Room 217 didn't become famous because of whispers. It became infamous because of one violent moment. In 1911, a maid named Elizabeth Wilson entered room 217 during a storm. She lit a lantern, unaware the room had a gas leak. The explosion nearly destroyed the entire floor. Elizabeth was thrown from the room, her body severely injured, her legs broken. She survived, but many believe something else was born that night. Because after the explosion, strange things began happening in room 217. Early paranormal reports. Guests staying in room 217 reported lights turning on and off. Belongings moved while they slept. Beds that appeared slept in when untouched, and luggage unpacked by unseen hands. Some claimed the room felt welcoming. Others said it felt hostile, as if it reacted differently to different people. The ghost of Elizabeth Wilson. Many believe room 217 is haunted by Elizabeth Wilson herself. Unlike violent spirits, her presence is described as methodical. She cleans, she organizes, she rearranges. Guests have returned to find clothes folded, shoes moved, and bags unpacked, while the door remained locked. One guest woke to the feeling of someone tugging their blankets, only to find no one there. When the room became personal. Some encounters go beyond movement. Guests have claimed hands brushing their arms, pressure on their chests while sleeping, being pushed without warning, and feeling someone sit on the bed beside them. In rare cases, people reported being angrily removed. One guest claimed an unseen force shoved them out of the room after they mocked the hauntings. The door slammed behind them and locked. Stephen King. The night that changed horror forever. In 1973, horror author Stephen King checked into the Stanley Hotel. It was late in the season, and the hotel was nearly empty. He and his wife were placed in room 217. That night, King experienced vivid nightmares, unexplainable dread, and the overwhelming feeling that the hotel itself was alive. He woke in terror. Before leaving, He had already begun imagining a story. That story became The Shining. Fact versus fiction. In the book, the haunted room was room 217. The hotel later requested the movie use room 237 instead to avoid scaring guests. But the real horror never left, because room 217 continued its activity long after King departed. The child in the white dress. One of the most chilling stories connected to room 217 involves a young girl. A guest claimed to wake in the night and see a child standing near the bed. She wore a white dress, her hair hung loosely, and her feet never touched the floor. The child walked slowly across the room, then vanished. Moments later, the smell of perfume filled the air with no source. Staff encounters hotel staff avoid room 217 whenever possible. Housekeepers have reported hearing voices while cleaning, feeling watched from the bathroom, and finding the room unlocked after locking it. One employee quit after refusing to enter the room alone again. The door remains open. Room 217 isn't just haunted, it's active. It responds, it remembers, and it chooses who it reveals itself to. But what makes room 217 truly terrifying is that not all encounters are gentle. Some are aggressive, some are personal, and some leave people changed forever. Because in part 2, we'll explore the most disturbing guest encounters ever reported and the evidence that suggests room 217 may not be haunted by just one spirit. The room that remembers. By now, room 217 had a reputation. Not rumors, not urban legends, patterns, decades of guests reporting the same phenomena, the same sensations, the same fear. Something was in that room, something intelligent, something aware, and it didn't just exist, it interacted. The shift from presence to contact early encounters involved movement, objects shifting, lights flickering, doors opening, but as years passed, guests began reporting something far more disturbing. Physical contact, being touched, being pushed, being held down. Room 217 was no longer passive, it was assertive. The night the bed moved, one guest staying alone in room 217 reported waking in the middle of the night to the sensation of motion. The bed was shaking, slowly at first, then violently. Believing it was an earthquake, the guest jumped up, but nothing else in the room moved. The lamps stayed still. The pictures didn't sway, only the bed, as if something beneath it was pushing upward. When the guest fled the room, the shaking stopped instantly. The bathroom that locks itself. Multiple guests have reported being locked inside the bathroom of room 217. Doors that refuse to open, handles that won't turn. Knocking heard from the other side when no one is there. One woman claimed she heard breathing inches from her ear while trapped inside, followed by a whisper she couldn't understand. When hotel staff opened the door, the bathroom was empty, but the mirror was fogged with fingerprints. The invisible weight. Another recurring experience is the feeling of pressure while sleeping. Guests describe waking unable to move, unable to breathe, with the sensation of someone sitting on their chest. Sleep paralysis is often blamed, but many of these guests were wide awake, fully conscious, and able to move moments later when the pressure vanished. One guest reported seeing the mattress dip beside them, as if someone had stood up and walked away. When belongings move with intent, room 217 is notorious for rearranging personal items. But what terrifies guests isn't that items move, it's how they move. Shoes placed neatly beside the bed, clothes folded carefully, jewelry aligned symmetrically on the dresser. This isn't chaos, it's deliberate. Guests have returned to find suitcases unpacked entirely, as if someone was preparing the room for long-term occupancy. The guest who was forced out, one of the most documented cases, involved a man who openly mocked the hauntings while staying in room 217. He laughed about it to staff, took photos while taunting the room. That night, he reported being violently shoved from behind while standing near the bed. He flew forward, hit the wall, and felt hands press against his back. The door slammed shut, locked. Hotel security had to let him out. He checked out immediately and refused to speak publicly afterward. Staff confessions. Employees of the Stanley Hotel rarely speak openly, but when they do, their stories match the guests'. Housekeepers report hearing their names called while alone in room 217. Maintenance workers refuse to stay inside the room after dark. One staff member claimed the temperature dropped so suddenly their breath became visible, then returned to normal seconds later. No mechanical explanation was found. The smell that appears. Another unexplained phenomenon is scent. Guests report sudden smells of perfume, floral, sweet, old-fashioned. It fills the room without warning, then disappears instantly. No candles, no sprays, no source. Paranormal researchers believe scent is one of the strongest indicators of spiritual presence, often associated with emotional memory. Is it only Elizabeth? While many believe Elizabeth Wilson remains in room 217, others argue there is more than one presence. Guests have reported distinctly different energies, one calm, one intrusive, one hostile. Some believe the explosion in 1911 opened something, not just leaving a spirit behind, but inviting others in. The room reacts to emotion. Perhaps the most unsettling pattern is how room 217 responds to people. Guests who arrive calm often experience mild activity. Guests who arrive fearful report escalation. Skeptics experience aggression. Sensitive individuals feel overwhelmed. It's as if the room reads you, then responds accordingly. Paranormal investigations. Investigators have captured EVPs inside room 217. Whispers, faint responses, and unexplained knocks. Equipment malfunctions frequently. Batteries drain, cameras fail. One investigator claimed his recorder picked up a childlike voice whispering, "Stay," just before shutting off. The line that shouldn't be crossed. Veteran investigators warn against provoking the room, not because it's dangerous, but because it reacts. Room 217 doesn't like being challenged, it doesn't like being tested, and it doesn't like being disrespected. Something is awake. Room 217 isn't frozen in the past. It's active in the present. It moves, it touches, it responds, and whatever lives there isn't fading. In Part 3, we'll examine the darkest theories surrounding Room 217, including claims that something far older than the hotel itself may be influencing what happens inside that room, when a place becomes a presence. By now, Room 217 has proven one thing beyond debate. Whatever exists inside that room does not behave like a memory. It does not drift aimlessly. It does not repeat itself blindly. It reacts, it observes, and it chooses when to act. Which leads to the most disturbing question investigators continue to ask: what exactly are guests interacting with? The official story, Elizabeth Wilson. The most widely accepted explanation centers around Elizabeth Wilson, the housekeeper injured in the 1911 gas explosion. She survived, returned to work, and lived many years afterward. Some believe she never truly left. Guests describe a gentle presence that tidies rooms, moves belongings carefully, and seems attached to the space rather than the people. This aligns with the idea of a residual spirit, one tied to routine. But Elizabeth's story does not explain the aggression. It does not explain the fear, and it does not explain the intelligence. When the behavior doesn't match the story, Elizabeth Wilson was known as kind, quiet, and reserved. Yet many encounters in room 217 involve force, being pushed, restrained, threatened. Guests report feelings of hostility, dread, and emotional pressure. These are not characteristics of a caretaker spirit, which raises the possibility that Elizabeth is not alone, or worse, that she is not the one responding. The multi-entity theory. Paranormal investigators have long suggested that room 217 contains more than one presence. Some describe a layered energy, one calm, one intrusive, one predatory. Guests have reported distinctly different sensations during separate visits, even on the same night. Some feel watched, others feel touched, some feel unwelcome. This suggests multiple intelligences occupying the same space. The land before the hotel. Before the Stanley Hotel stood on that hill, the land belonged to native tribes who believed certain locations acted as spiritual crossroads, places where energy gathered, places where the boundary between worlds thinned. The hotel was built directly atop this land, without ceremony, without respect. Some believe room 217 sits at a focal point, a pressure point where energies collide. The invitation theory. One of the darkest theories suggests room 217 doesn't trap spirits, it attracts them. That the activity itself draws attention, that each emotional response, each fearful guest, feeds the room. Paranormal researchers describe this as an open loop. Energy enters, but never leaves. Over time, the presence grows stronger, smarter, more aware. Stephen King and the warning. When Stephen King stayed in room 217 in 1973, he didn't claim to see a ghost. What he experienced was worse. Overwhelming dread, a feeling of being unwelcome, a sense that something was watching him think. That night didn't inspire The Shining because he saw something. It inspired it because he felt something intelligent enough to be threatening without revealing itself. The room that chooses you guests report that not everyone experiences activity. Some sleep peacefully, others leave traumatized. This inconsistency terrifies investigators because it suggests intent, selection, as if the room decides who to engage with. Those who arrive emotionally open seem more affected. Those who challenge the room often face escalation. It behaves less like a haunting and more like a predator testing boundaries. Technology versus the unknown. Modern investigations using EMF readers, thermal cameras, and EVP recorders show irregular spikes isolated almost exclusively to room 217. Devices malfunction, batteries drain, files corrupt. Some believe the presence understands technology and actively interferes with it, not to hide, but to control. The final question: if room 217 were simply haunted, the activity would be predictable, repetitive, fading. Instead, it adapts, it intensifies, it responds, which leads to the most unsettling possibility of all. What if room 217 isn't haunted by the dead, but occupied by something that was never alive? Final warning. Visitors still request room 217. Staff still rent it. The door still opens. The lights still turn on. But those who know the stories avoid it. Because whatever lives there doesn't need darkness to exist. It doesn't need silence. It doesn't need belief. Room 217 doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It doesn't reveal itself fully. It waits, it watches, and it remembers everyone who sleeps inside its walls. So if you ever find yourself at the Stanley Hotel and you're offered a stay in room 217, ask yourself one question before you accept. Are you checking into the room, or is the room checking into you?